Welcome, everyone. It's the Spiritual Gangsta Book Club, and I'm your girl Shannon, aka the Spiritual Gangsta, and I'm here as your host. Welcome, Jasmine. Welcome, Discipline One. Welcome, anybody who's listening to the replay. How's everybody doing this evening? I was a little late getting this email this week. I'm going to blame it on retrograde, okay? Or pre-shadow retrograde. Just because, I'm sure it's my fault, but I'm going to blame it on that. So I'm going to do a quick little recap on what Jasmine, yes. All I can do is laugh. On what we went over last week. We started chapter 7, which is called or titled The Unmanifested. This chapter began on page 129. Those of you, we are reading The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle. In this chapter, Eckhart Tolle took us on a journey into the inner body, teaching us to go more deeply into feeling our true essence. He spoke about the differences between chi and what he calls the unmanifested. And when I read through this, it resonates to me as source energy within our body. So the unmanifested is that deep being within our soul, which is source energy within the body. It's different than chi, which is life force energy, which is, being able to manifest things in our life and to be able to control, or not necessarily control, but to be able to manipulate the energy around us. He spoke about the different ways that we were able to get in touch with the inner body. And pretty much this is what we are in the middle of. We're continuing chapter 7, page 135. And we should be able to finish up chapter 7. This one is a pretty detailed chapter, because he's teaching different ways, basically, where we can get in touch with that inner being and really silence the mind, deepen our meditation practice. He does also go through a guided meditation, which I suggested in the email for us to go ahead and redo that, revisit that, so that you can just practice getting deeper in touch with the unmanifested. I also played a little sound bowl session last one, so if you want to replay and listen to it, you're welcome to do so. I was trying to get to you guys a recorded session, but that didn't happen this week. Let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start on page 135. We're on the bottom towards the end of the page, and it says silence. Silence. Are there any other portals apart from those you just mentioned? Yes, there are. The unmanifested is not separate from the manifested. It pervades this world, but it is so well disguised that almost everybody misses it completely. If you know where to if you know where to look, you'll find it everywhere. A portal opens up every moment. Did you hear the dog barking in the distance or that car passing by? Listen carefully. Can you feel the presence of the unmanifested in that? You can't? Look for it in the silence out of which the sounds come and into which they return. Pay more attention to the silence than to the sounds. Paying attention to the outer silence creates inner silence. The mind becomes still. A portal is opening up. Every sound is born out of silence, dies back into silence, and during its lifespan is surrounded by silence. Silence enables the sound to be. It is intrinsic but unmanifested part of every sound, every musical note, every song, every word. The unmanifested is present in this world as silence. This is why it has been said that nothing in this world is so like God as silence. All you have to do is pay attention to it. Even during a conversation, become conscious of the gaps between words. the brief silent intervals between sentences. As you do that, the dimension of stillness grows within you. You cannot pay attention to silence without simultaneously becoming still within. Silence without stillness within. You have entered the unmanifested. Space. Just as no sound can exist without silence, nothing can exist without no thing. Without the empty space that enables it to be. Every physical object or body has come out of nothing, is surrounded by nothing, and will eventually return to nothing. Not only that, but even inside every physical body, there is far more nothing than something. Physicists tells us that the solidity of matter is an illusion. Even seemingly solid matter, including your physical body, is nearly 100% empty space. So vast are the distances between the atoms compared to their size. What is more, even inside every atom, there's mostly empty space. What is left is more like a vibrational frequency than particles of solid matter, more like a musical note. Buddhists have known for over 2,500 years, form is emptiness and emptiness is form, states the Heart Sutra, one of the best known ancient Buddhist texts. The essence of all things is emptiness. The unmanifested is not only present in the world as silence, it also pervades the entire physical. One of the best known ancient Buddhist texts. The essence of all things is emptiness. The unmanifested is not only present in the world as silence, it also pervades the entire physical universe as space, from within and from without. This is just as easy to miss as silence. Everybody pays attention to the things in space, but who pays attention to space itself? You seem to be implying that emptiness or nothing is not just nothing, that there's something mysterious quality to it. What is this nothing? You cannot ask such a question. Your mind is trying to make nothing into something. The moment you make it into something, you have missed it. Nothing, space, is the appearance of the unmanifested, as an externalized phenomenon, in a sense perceived world. That's about as much as one can say about it. And even that it is a kind of paradox. It cannot become an object of knowledge. You can't do a PhD on nothing. When scientists study space, they usually make it into something and thereby miss its essence entirely. Not surprisingly, the latest theory is that space isn't empty at all, that it's filled with some substance. Once you have a theory, it's not hard to find evidence to substantiate it, at least until some other theory comes along. Nothing can only be a portal into the unmanifested if you don't try to grasp or understand it. Isn't that what we're doing here? Not at all. I'm giving you pointers to show you how you can bring the dimension of the unmanifested into your life. We're not trying to understand it. There's nothing to understand. Space has no existence. To exist literally means to stand out. You cannot understand space because it doesn't stand out. Although in itself has no existence, it enables everything else to exist. Silence has no existence either, nor does the unmanifested. So what happens if you withdraw attention from the objects in space and become aware of space itself? What is the essence of this room? The furniture, pictures, and so on are in the room, but they are not the room. The floor, walls, and ceiling define the boundaries of the room, but they are not the room either. So what is the essence of the room? Space. Empty space. There would be no room without it. Since space is nothing, we can say that what is not there is more important than what is there. So become aware of the space that is all around you. Don't think about it. Feel it as it were. Pay attention to nothing. As you do that, a shift in consciousness takes place inside you. And here's why. The inner equivalent to objects in space, such as furniture, walls, and so on, are your mind objects, thoughts, emotions, and the objects of senses. And the inner equivalent of space is the consciousness that enables your mind objects to be. Just as space allows all things to be. So if you withdraw attention from things, the objects in your space, you automatically withdraw attention from your mind objects as well. In other words, you cannot think and be aware of space, or of silence for that matter. By becoming aware of the empty space around you, you simultaneously become aware of the space of no mind, of pure consciousness, the unmanifested. This is how the contemplation of space became a portal for you. Space and silence are two aspects of the same thing, the same no thing. They are an externalization of inner space and inner silence, which is stillness, the infinite creative womb of all existence. Most humans are completely unconscious of this dimension. There is no inner space, no stillness. They are out of balance. In other words, they know the world, or they think they do, but they don't know God. They identify exclusively with their own physical and psychological form, unconscious of essence. And because every form is highly unstable, they live in fear. This fear causes a deep misperception of themselves and other humans, a distortion in their vision of the world. If some cosmic convulsion brought about the end of our world, the unmanifested would remain totally unaffected by this. A Course in Miracles expresses this truth poignantly. I don't know that word. Poignantly. Sorry, guys. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. If you remain in conscious connection with the unmanifested, you value love and deeply respect the manifested in every form, in it as an expression of the one life beyond form. You also know that every form is destined to dissolve again, and that ultimately nothing out here matters all that much. You have overcome the world, in the words of Jesus, or as the Buddha put it, you have crossed over the other shore. The true nature of space and time. Now consider this. If there were nothing but silence, it wouldn't exist for you. You wouldn't know what it is. Only when sound appears does silence become into being. Similarly, if there were only space without any objects in space, it wouldn't exist for you. Imagine yourself as a point of consciousness floating in the vastness of space. No stars, no galaxies, just emptiness. Suddenly, space wouldn't be vast anymore. It would not be there at all. There would be no speed, no movement from here to there. At least 2 points of reference are needed for distance and space to come into being. Space comes into being the moment the one becomes two, and as two becomes the 10,000 things, as Laotes calls the manifested world, space becomes more and more vast. So the world and space arise simultaneously. Nothing could be without space, yet space is nothing. Before the universe came into being, before the Big Bang, if you like, there wasn't a vast empty space waiting to be filled. There was no space. There was no thing. Sorry, guys. Let me turn my notifications off. Okay. There was no space. There was no thing. There was only unmanifested, the one. When the one came, the 10,000 things suddenly space seemed to be there and enable the many be. Where did it come from? Was it created by God to accommodate the universe? Of course not. Space is no thing, so it was never created. Go out on a clear night and look up at the sky. The thousands of stars you can see with the naked eye are no more than an infinitesimal fraction of what there is. Over 100 billion galaxies can already be detected with the most powerful telescopes. Each galaxy an island universe with billions of stars. Yet, what is even more awe-inspiring is the infinity of space itself. The depth and stillness that allows all of the magnificence to be. Nothing could be more awe-inspiring and majestic than the inconceivable vastness and stillness of space. And yet, what is it? Emptiness. Vast emptiness. What appears to us as space in our universe perceived through the mind and the senses is the unmanifested itself, externalized. It is the body of God. And the greatest miracle is this: that stillness and vastness that enables the universe to be is not just out there in space. It is also within you. When you are utterly and totally present, you encounter it as the still inner space of no mind. Within you, it is vast in depth, not in extension. Spatial extension is ultimately a misperception of the infinite depth, an attribute of the one transcendental reality. According to Einstein, space and time are not separate. I don't really understand it, but I think he's saying that time is the fourth dimension of space. He calls it the space-time continuum. Yes, what you perceive externally as space and time are ultimately illusionary, but they contain a core of truth. They are the two essential attributes of God: infinity and externity, perceived as if they had an external existence outside you. Within you, both space and time have an internal equivalent that reveals their true nature as well as your own. Whereas space is the still, infinitely deep realm of no mind, the inner equivalent of time is presence, awareness of the eternal now. Remember that there is no distinction between them. When space and time are realized within as the unmanifested, no mind and presence, external space and time continue to exist for you, but they become much less important. The world, too, continues to exist for you, but will not bind you anymore. Hence, the ultimate purpose of the world lies not within the world, but in the transcendence of the world. Just as you would not be conscious of space if there were no objects in space, the world is needed for the unmanifested to be realized. You may have heard the Buddhist saying, if there were no illusions, there would be no enlightenment. It is through the world and ultimately through you that the unmanifested knows itself. You are here to enable the divine purpose of the universe to unfold. That is how important you are. Let me get some water. Conscious death. Apart from the dreamless sleep, which I mentioned already, there is one other involuntary portal. It opens up briefly at the time of physical death. Even if you have missed all the other opportunities for spiritual realization during your lifetime, one last portal will open up for you immediately after the body has died. There are countless accounts by people who had a visual impression of this portal as a radiant light and then returned from what is commonly known as near-death experience. Many of them also spoke of a sense of blissful serenity and deep peace. In the Tibetan Book of the Dead, it is described as the luminous splendor of the colorless light of emptiness, which it says is your own true self. This portal opens up only very briefly, and unless you have already encountered the dimension of the unmanifested in your lifetime, you'll probably miss it. Most people carry too much residual resistance, too much fear, too much attachment to sensory experience, too much identification with the manifested world. So they see the portal, turn away in fear, and then lose consciousness. Most of what happens after that is involuntary and automatic. Eventually, there will be another round of birth and death. Their presence wasn't strong enough yet for conscious immortality. So going through this portal doesn't mean annihilation. As with all the other portals, your radiant true nature remains, but not the personality. In any case, whatever is real or of true value in your personality is your true nature shining through. This is never lost. Nothing that is of value, nothing that is real, is ever lost. Approaching death and death itself, the dissolution of the physical form, is always a great opportunity for spiritual realization. This opportunity is tragically missed most of the time, since we live in a culture that is almost totally ignorant of death, as it is almost totally ignorant of anything that truly matters. Every portal is a portal of death, the death of false self. When you go through it, you cease to derive your identity from the psychological mind-made form. You then realize that death is an illusion, just as your identification with the form was an illusion. The end of illusion, that's all that death is. It is painful only for as long as you cling to the illusion. So that was the end of chapter 7. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. Anybody who wants to come up, you're welcome to come up and share. So I really like this, the silence and the space. When we got to space, I couldn't help but think about Discipline 1D. Can you guys hear me? I guess I'll just keep talking. So I saw here in the space area. I really enjoyed this part because reminded me of when Discipline 1 was talking in a space or listening to a space about a woman who's an astronaut and actually went into space, and how I think she was saying like she met God there or something, or it just like changed her or something, and how being in space. And so that's what I was thinking about the whole time I was reading that area. I would love for you to chime in if you're able to speak, but I could only imagine like being in space and really like experiencing that vastness, where there's absolutely nothing around. Welcome to the stage, Discipline 1. D, sorry.
Hello. I
Can
caught the
you?
back end of that. My audio was going in and out. I think you were talking about when C.M. Proctor,
Yes,
the
that's
astronaut that I was listening to.
yes.
Right. She's the first African American in space, African American woman in space. Um, and just she's a poet and an artist, so it was very unique hearing her speak because the way that she described space was very like I never heard it, never thought about it that way, and you know she described the experience as like it was just awe inspiring. Like she talked about the earth light and watching the earth from the I think it's the stratosphere. Like once we exit the atmosphere, we enter the first. And so orbiting earth and just being able to, she was part of one of the missions that the ship that she was on, they were able to, their body was able to protrude the spaceship, so they were able to like get half of their body outside. It was the first time that you could have that type of experience, um, and so she described the Earth light as being something that she just was in total awe of, um, you know, and the experience that she described, it was like nothing she had ever seen before, and just seeing Earth from that distance and just taking herself out of the picture. And just describing everything. They're up there and everything's in silence, complete silence, like just total silence. So, she described space as solving real world problems, and I never looked at it like that before. In terms of, you know, in space, you don't have a lot of resources, so you have to work with minimal resources. So, it teaches you how to, you know, deal with problems and situations with not the normal resources that you do have. So it was a different perspective and just really awe-inspiring, her story, and hearing her describe her journey into space.
That's so interesting. Like, exactly what he's saying, like the space and the silence, right? There's nothing up there. Like, even if here and you're trying to get to that moment of silence, you still have like the hum of the air conditioner, or like you could still outside your home. I know I can't like hear the train go by, and you still have small little things. So it's like where he's saying you have to find the silence between everything. So like when the train stops before the next noise comes, like, but when you're out in space, there's literally nothing. And when you're saying that she's hearing or she saw the um the earth light, right? That's, to me, is what he's describing as the death, right? When you go to that portal of death and you see when people are like, they have those near death experiences, this is where like they're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Basically, that's what I'm kind of like gathering from what you're saying by her, the earth light. Super interesting. Does anyone else have anything they would like to share? Welcome, Jessica. We're reading The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle. We just finished up chapter 7. And this is where he's talking about all the different ways we can really connect to our inner essence, that source energy, God energy that's within us. It's deep within us, and it's not something that's only external from us. It's all around us and within us. So he's teaching us how to get in. I like there was another part here that I really enjoyed. Oh, this part when conscious death, approaching death and death itself, the dissolution of the physical form, is always a great opportunity for spiritual realization. The opportunity is tragically missed most of the time, since we live in a culture that is almost totally ignorant of death, as it is almost totally ignorant of anything that truly matters. I wanted to say mic drop after I read that. And this conscious death, if you have attended any type of spiritual ceremony with plant medicine, I know personally I've done ayahuasca, say mushrooms, cacao, and these experiences, when you're with a shaman, the shaman is taught to drag you, carry you, guide you through an ego death, which is the conscious death, which is that like a near death experience. And I totally get it when he says that, it's a great opportunity for spiritual realization, but most people miss it because people go in and this is why a lot of people get stuck on plant medicines. Like, I think I maybe did 5 ceremonies before I was initiated, and I was like, I don't need this medicine anymore. I am the medicine, because I was really seeking God, and I was seeking for enlightenment, and I knew, like, I didn't have to keep digging in this dirt to find myself. I wasn't there. And a lot of people miss out on those opportunities of really connecting and letting go of the conscious death, letting go of the consciousness, the ego, because they're searching for something. They're searching, and instead of just being and realizing, like, you are this that you're seeking. Everything you're seeking is already within you. Like, you don't have to go outside yourself for it. So if nobody has anything they want to, I see Jasmine's putting up the 100. Did they bring that? How'd you get the 100? I love that. Like, wait a minute, I don't have that emoji.
She must have not updated her Twitter.
Dang. Hold up.
She still has the old Twitter. If
I
I would
keep
have known, I
looking
wouldn't
for
have
that.
updated mine either.
Oh man, I keep looking for that 100. All right, so we're gonna move to chapter 8. This is called Enlightened Relationships. I don't know that we're going to make it all the way through this one, because this is a pretty nice chapter as well. But we will begin it here. Again, we're reading The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle. We're on page 145. Enlightened Relationships. Enter the now from wherever you are. I always thought that true enlightenment is not possible except through love in a relationship between a man and a woman. Isn't this what makes us whole again? How can one's life be fulfilled until that happens? Is that true in your experience? Has this happened to you? Not yet, but how could it be otherwise? I know that it will happen. So, in other words, you are waiting for an event in time to save you. Is this not the core error that we have been talking about? Salvation is not elsewhere in place or time. It is here and now. What does that statement mean? Salvation is here and now. I don't understand. I don't even know what salvation means. Most people pursue physical pleasures or various forms of psychological gratification because they believe that those things will make them happy or free them from a feeling of fear or lack. Happiness may be perceived as a heightened sense of aliveness attained through physical pleasure, or a more secure and more complete sense of self attained through some form of psychological gratification. This is the search for salvation from a state of unsatisfactoriness or insufficiency. Invariably, any satisfaction that they obtain is short lived. So, the condition of satisfaction or fulfillment is usually projected once again onto an imaginary point away from the here and now. When I obtain this, or I am free of that, then I will be okay. This is the unconscious mindset that creates the illusion of salvation in the future. True salvation is fulfillment, peace, life in all its fullness. It is to be who you are, to feel within you the good that has no opposite, the joy of being that depends on nothing outside itself. It is felt not as a passing experience, but as an abiding presence. In theistic language, it is to know God, not as something outside you, but as your own innermost essence. True salvation is to know yourself as an inseparable part of the timeless and formless one life from which all that exists derives its being. True salvation is a state of freedom from fear, from suffering, from a perceived state of lack and insufficiency, and therefore from all wanting, needing, grasping, and clinging. It is freedom from compulsive thinking, from negativity, and above all, from past and future as a psychological need. Your mind is telling you that you cannot get there from here. Something needs to happen, or you need to become this or that before you can be free and fulfilled. It is saying, in fact, that you need time, that you need to find, sort out, do, achieve, acquire, become, or understand something before you can be free or complete. You see time as the means to salvation, whereas in truth, it is the greatest obstacle to salvation. You think that you cannot get there from where and who you are at this moment because you are not yet complete or good enough. But the truth is that here and now is the only point from where you can get there. You get there by realizing you are there already. You find God in the moment you realize that you don't need to seek God. So there is no only way to salvation. Any condition can be used, but no particular condition is needed. However, there is only one point of access, the now. There can be no salvation away from this moment. You are lonely and without a partner. Enter the now from there. You are in a relationship. Enter the now from there. There is nothing you can ever do or obtain that will get you closer to salvation than it is at this moment. This may be hard to grasp for a mind accustomed to thinking that everything worthwhile is in the future, nor can anything that you ever did or that was done to you in the past prevent you from saying yes to what is and taking your attention deeply into the now. You cannot do this in the future. You do it now or not at all. And there's a pause there. So, if anybody wants to share, you're welcome to come up. So, I think this is great. This is pretty much what we kind of just, I was saying, where, there's nothing, you don't have to experience anything else. Everything is within you. But many people do find themselves, you can see this not only in relationships, where here they're talking about, I'll find a partner and then I'll be happy. And many women were taught this, were made to believe that once I have a partner, then I'll be okay. Because once I have a family, once I get married, once I have kids, then I'm going to be something because I'm proving myself to society, right? And men are taught, once you obtain a certain role or a certain level of income or position in your job or status, then you're something. And it could be, vice versa. You could be a woman chasing a career or something, and even a man chasing, a relationship. But this is not what will make you happy or make you complete or make you feel good. And in the other book club I'm in, we finished up the book, The Go Giver, and this was something we were having a workshop last week, talking about defining what success meant to us. And many people feel like success is, I oh my god, I made that goal and now I feel successful. But then it's like, okay, well, now what? Now what do I do? And they get complacent and they get stagnant because they don't know the next step. But success is being, it's enjoying the life, it's enjoying every step of the way towards your goal. And it's the same thing here, where just being in the moment and understanding, like, I don't need anything outside myself to be happy, to be complete, to be fulfilled. It's a similar dynamic that he's talking about here.
So I heard a quote over, or not heard. Yeah, I did hear a quote. I've been listening to a lot of Deepak Chopra lately, and he's had a quote that it reminded me of this book. It says, "The point of arrival is always now."
Mm,
And I thought that was such a powerful statement right there. So we're always trying to get somewhere. We're always trying to, but at the end of the day, like, we're just trying to be present.
100%. 100%. I agree with that. And that's such a perfect quote for here, for this book.
Right?
Such a perfect quote for this book. 100%. And that's, we each have like the masculine and the feminine energy within us. And the masculine is the one that, makes the schedules and gets the things done and does and does and does. And that's like mostly like when we go out into the world, it's like, okay, what do I got to do? I got to go somewhere. I got to do something. And, being present, I'm not saying it's only for females, but it is more of like that feminine energy where you're just being. You're just, and we all have both dynamics, and we need a healthy balance, and that is part of the process. It's just being. We don't have to keep doing something. We don't have to always keep going out and do. We still have time, and I'm going to read the next section here, page 147. Love hate relationships. Unless and until you access the conscious frequency of presence, all relationships, and particularly intimate relationships, are deeply flawed and ultimately dysfunctional. They may seem perfect for a while, such as when you're in love, but invariably, that apparent perfection gets disrupted as arguments, conflicts, dissatisfaction, and emotional or even physical violence occur with increasing frequency. It seems that most love relationships become love-hate relationships before long. Love can then turn into savage attack, feelings of hostility, or complete withdrawal of affection at the flick of a switch. This is considered normal. The relationship then oscillates for a while, a few months or few years, between the polarities of love and hate, and it gives you as much pleasure as it gives you pain. It is not uncommon for couples to become addicted to those cycles. Their drama makes them feel alive. When a balance between the positive, negative polarities is lost, and the negative, destructive cycles occur with an increasing frequency and intensity, which tends to happen sooner or later, then it will not be long before the relationship finally collapses. It may appear that if you could only eliminate the negative or destructive cycles, then all would be well and the relationship would flower beautifully. But alas, this is not possible. The polarities are mutually interdependent. You cannot have one without the other. The positive already contains within itself the time, as yet unmanifested negative. Both are in fact different aspects of the same dysfunction. I'm speaking here of what are commonly called romantic relationships, not of love, which has no opposite because it arises from beyond the mind. Love as a continuous state is as yet very rare as conscious human beings. Brief and elusive glimpses of love, however, are possible whenever there is a gap in the stream of mind. The negative side of a relationship is, of course, more easily recognizable as dysfunctional than the positive one. And it is also easier to recognize the source of negativity in your partner than to see it in yourself. It can manifest in many forms: possessiveness, jealousy, control, withdrawal, and unspoken resentment. The need to be right, insensitivity, and self-absorption, emotional demands, and manipulation. The urge to argue, criticize, judge, blame, attack, anger, unconscious revenge for past pain inflicted by a parent, and rage and physical violence. On the positive side, you are in love with your partner. This is at first a deeply satisfying state. You feel intensely alive, your existence has suddenly become meaningful because someone needs you, wants you, and makes you feel special. And you do the same for them. When you are together, you feel whole. The feeling that can become so intense that the rest of the world fades into insignificance. However, you may also have noticed that there is a neediness and a clinging quality to that intensity. You become addicted to the other person. He or she acts like a drug to you. You are on a high when the drug is available, but even the possibility or the thought that he or she might no longer be there for you can lead to jealousy, possessiveness, attempts to manipulate through emotional blackmail, blaming, accusing, or fear of loss. If the other person does leave you, this can give rise to the most intense hostility or the most profound grief and despair. In an instant, loving tenderness can turn into savage attack or dreadful grief. Where is the love now? Can love change into its opposite in an instant? Was it love in the first place, or just an addictive grasping and clinging? Addiction and the search for wholeness. Why should we become addicted to another person? The reason why the romantic love relationship is such an intense and universally sought after experience is that it seems to offer liberation from a deep-seated state of fear, need, lack, and incompleteness. It is part of the human condition in its unredeemed and unenlightened state. There is a physical as well as a psychological dimension to this state. On the physical level, you're obviously, sorry guys, obviously not whole, nor will you ever be. You are either a man or a woman, which is to say, one half of the whole. On this level, the longing for wholeness, to return to oneness, manifests as male female attraction. Man's need for a woman, woman's need for a man. It is an almost irresistible urge for union with the opposite energy polarity. So I just want to make it clear here. When he's talking about man and woman, we all have an energy, and we either resonate deeply with a masculine type of energy or feminine energy. So think energy and not gender. So the root of this physical urge is a spiritual one. The longing for an end to duality, a return to the state of wholeness. Sexual union is the closest you can get to state on the physical level. This is why it is the most deeply satisfying experience the physical realm can offer. But sexual union is no more than a fleeting glimpse of wholeness, an instant of bliss. As long as it is unconsciously sought as a means of salvation, you are seeking the end of duality on the level of form, where it cannot be found. You're giving a tantalizing glimpse of heaven. but you're not allowed to dwell there and find yourself again in a separate body. On the psychological level, the sense of lack and incompleteness, if anything, even greater than on the physical level. As long as you are identified with the mind, you have an external derived sense of self. That is to say, you get your sense of who you are from things that ultimately have nothing to do with who you are. Your social role, possessiveness, external appearance, successes, failures, belief systems, and so on. This false mind-made self, the ego, feels vulnerable, insecure, and is always seeking new things to identify with to give it a feeling that it exists. But nothing is ever enough to give it lasting fulfillment. Its fear remains, its sense of lack and neediness remains. But then, that special relationship comes along. It seems to be the answer to all the problems and to meet all the needs. At least this is how it appears at first. All the other things that you derived your sense of self from before now become insignificant. You now have a single focus point that replaces them all. That gives meaning to your life and through which you define your identity. The person you are in love with. You are no longer a disconnected fragment in an uncaring universe. Your world now has a center, the loved one. The fact that the center is outside you and that therefore you still have an external derived sense of self doesn't seem to matter at first. What matters is that the underlying feelings of incompleteness, of fear, lack, and unfulfillment, so characteristic of the egoic state, are no longer there. Or are they? Have they dissolved? Or do they continue to exist underneath the happy surface reality? If in your relationship you experience both love and the opposite of love, attack, emotional violence, and so on, then it's likely that you're confusing ego attachment and addictive clinging with love. You cannot love your partner one moment and attack them the next. True love has no opposite. If your love has an opposite, then it is not love, but a strong ego need for a more complete and deeper sense of self. A need that the other person temporarily meets. It's the ego's substitute for salvation. And for a short time, it does feel like salvation. But there will come a point when your partner behaves in ways that fail to meet your needs, or rather those of your ego. The feelings of fear, pain, and lack that are an intrinsic part of egoic consciousness, but have been covered up by the love relationship, now resurface. Just as with every other addiction, you're on a high when it's available, but invariably there comes a time when the drug no longer works. When those painful feelings reappear, you feel them even more strongly than before. And what is more, you now perceive your partner as the cause of those feelings. This means that you project them outward and attack the other with all the savage violence that is part of your pain. This attack may awaken your partner's own pain, and they may counter your attack. At this point, the ego is still unconsciously hoping that its attack and attempts at manipulation will be sufficient punishment to induce your partner to change their behavior so that they can use them again as a covering up of their pain, your pain. Every addiction arises from an unconscious refusal to face and move through your own pain. Every addiction starts with the pain and ends with pain. Whatever the substance you are addicted to, alcohol, food, legal, illegal drugs, or a person, you're using something to somebody to cover up your pain. That's why, after the initial euphoria has passed, there is so much unhappiness, so much pain in intimate relationships. They do not cause pain and unhappiness. They bring out the pain and unhappiness that is already within you. Every addiction does that. Every addiction reaches a point to where it does not work for you anymore, and then you feel pain more intensely than ever. This is the one reason why most people are always trying to escape from the present moment and are seeking some kind of salvation in the future. The first thing that they might encounter if they focus their attention on the now is their own pain. And that's what they fear. If they only knew how easy it is to access the now, the power of presence that dissolves the past and its pain, the reality that dissolves the illusions. If they only knew how close they are to their own reality, how close to God. Avoidance of a relationship in attempt to avoid pain is not the answer either. The pain is still there. 3 failed relationships in as many as 3 years are more likely to force you to awaken than 3 years in a desert island or shut away in your room. But if you could bring intense presence into your aloneness, that would have worked for you too. And there's a pause here. Oh, that's a really powerful chapter here. A great reminder for me. When I began my awakening journey, it was after I had my second child and I split from their father. And I really just began to dig deep on, because I kept experiencing the same relationship over and over again. And I was just tired. And I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I really began a deeper journey within myself and a self-discovery of love, loving myself. And then I think it was like on the second year of that where I was like, what is love? And I really was trying to understand what love meant to me. And then I was understanding unconditional love and what that meant to me and in a whole. Like, because a lot of people we're taught love is, you meet someone, you get in a relationship, you start a family. And if you were anything like me, I had such a distortion of love and watching my mother go through relationships that were abusive physically, emotionally, and not only to her, but to me as well. So I was so confused about what love meant and what it was truly supposed to be. I was also sexually molested when I was a child. So that gave me a false sense of like the way I was supposed to perceive or receive love. There's just so much that went in, and I never explored it. I never took time to ask myself, like, what is love? I just went with what I was conditioned to believe it was. And that was the best thing I ever did, because I really began to love myself and accept myself. And then I began to love other people, and I was able to heal the way I viewed men. I thought men were cheaters and liars, and none of them were enlightened, and they were incapable of even understanding me or doing anything. Like, I had a really horrible distortion of men. But it's important to always revisit this. And this is a great reminder for me, because I'm going through some personal stuff, like I'm raising 2 boys, and I'm going through different experiences. And this is just to remember, like, nothing is outside of myself. Love is not outside of myself. I don't need anyone else to. It's beautiful to have a relationship, and I'm so grateful for my relationship. But they are not my happiness. They are not the source of my happiness. And this is a great reminder. I really enjoyed this section. All right. Well, it's 9:06, and we usually wrap up around 9:00. So we're ending on page 153. The next section that we're going to go into is From Addictive to Enlightened Relationships, and that's next Sunday. Our implementation of what we've read, I would highly suggest that you guys take time this week to perhaps like ask yourself, what does love mean to you? You know, since we're diving into the relationship section, what does love mean to you? What is your definition of love? What does it look like? How does it show up? And are you do you have any type of relationships? It doesn't have to be romantic. You know, do you have any types of relationships where it seems like there's any type of addiction around it? Are you seeking outside yourself for other people to fulfill? If this isn't something that's ringing true to you, then you can look at like maybe work or your successes, your careers. Is there a goal or something that you're waiting to achieve before you actually feel like you're being true and happy and that you can really live life, you know? Or to just become aware of your mind and consciousness of like where your emotional state is, where your emotional being is. Are you currently present in the moment? Even if like it may seem like your whole freaking world is like falling apart, can you find the love within and the happiness and satisfaction within of where you're currently at, and know like you're being guided to a good place? You're on your path. You're just needing to become more present. And that's my suggestion for you guys for this week. Come back, work on that, work through that, and come back. And I encourage you guys to share next week. Thank you guys for showing up. I greatly appreciate it. Because if you weren't here, I'd be reading to myself, and it's so much fun when we have other people. I know it's starting to get a little intense as we talk about relationships. This is completely safe space to be vulnerable and to open up. I have been through a lot and I can empathize a lot, and I am here to listen to you guys as well. Thank you guys so much for joining me. If you want to check out all the past readings, you can go to anchoredsoultherapy.com and check out under the book club. I have links to all the old readings of The Power of Now. I've saved them, put them in chronological order. Also, links to my emails are on there as well. You can sign up for the emails where I'll go and give you an overview of what we did, plus the integration work. And that's it. Thanks for joining me. I'm Shannon, aka Spiritual Gangsta, and I will see you guys next Sunday. Thanks so much. Enjoy your evening.